So the Trump administration, which has been led actually by Stephen Miller when it comes to immigration, has been cracking down on both undocumented and legal immigrants. People are actually in the country legally. And now they've taken the extraordinary step of going after people who are actually Americans, American citizens. Now, the Trump administration is accusing hundreds and possibly thousands of Hispanics along the border of using fraudulent birth certificates since they were children, and is undertaking a widespread crackdown on their citizenship. Now, in some cases, passport applicants with official birth certificates are being jailed in immigration detention centers and entered into deportation proceedings. In others, they are stuck in Mexico, their passports suddenly revoked when they try to re-enter the United States, as the Trump administration attempts to reduce both legal and illegal immigration. The government's treatment of passport applicants in South Texas shows how U.S. citizens are increasingly being swept up by immigration enforcement agencies. So here we have them going after people with Hispanic origin on the border who are legal American citizens, but yet they're still being either detained or deported. That's insanity. Insanity. Now this starts back in the 1990s, right? So there was some evidence back in the 90s that there were some midwives and physicians in Texas that were issuing birth certificates for children actually born in Mexico. Now, it's really hard to identify. So the Obama administration tried to identify these people. They did not have much luck, and they kind of left it alone. I mean, look, these people, if they actually do have a fraudulent birth certificate, for one, they wouldn't know it. So they think they're citizens anyway, and they've been working, and they've been paying taxes, and they've been doing everything a citizen should do. So I guess what's the point of going after them and deporting them, right? So the Obama administration's like, okay, look, we're not going to really go after this. Then when the Trump administration decides to come in, well, then is when they decide to go after this. Now, under President Trump, the passport denials and revocations appear to be surging, becoming part of a broader interrogation into the citizenship of people who have lived, voted, and worked in the United States for their entire lives. Now, in its statement, the State Department said that applicants who have birth certificates filed by a midwife or other birth attendant suspected of having engaged in fraudulent activities, as well as applicants who have both a U.S. and foreign birth certificate, are asked to provide additional documentation establishing they were born in the United States. So that has Stephen Miller's name written all over it. We don't believe you. We think that you're part of this, so we're going to ask you for additional documentation to prove that you're a citizen. And if you're not, we're going to deport you, despite the fact that you've lived, worked, paid taxes, and everything here in the United States, and, grew up here and established a life here. We don't care about any of that. If we think that you're not a citizen, off you go. Now, individuals who are unable to demonstrate that they are born in the United States are denied issuance of a passport. Now, I mentioned paperwork, right? So what kind of paperwork? Well, they're asking for things like baptismal records, rental agreements, and prenatal care records. Wow. Now, look, I don't have any of those records. I don't even have a rental agreement for the last place that I lived at, much less from when I was a baby. But hey, then again, well, I'm white, so I can get away with it. But somebody who's on the Texas-Mexico border, suddenly they have to come up with all this paperwork to prove that they're a citizen. Now, there's one example of this happening. There's a veteran born in Texas who had been a Border Patrol agent. He obviously served in the military, and he was basically applying for a routine passport renewal. However, he received a letter from the State Department saying that, hey, you know what? We're not convinced that you're actually a U.S. citizen. So we're going to go and we're going to ask for all these documents. Now, the person in question managed to find those documents, but weeks later received another denial. In a letter, the government said the information, quote, did not establish your birth in the United States. So he gets all these documents that they request, and that still wasn't enough. Look, this person served the country, served in the military, worked ironically as a border patrol agent, and now works as a prison guard. But because he's Latino, he lives near the border, well, suddenly the government under Donald Trump doesn't believe that he's a citizen and wants to deport him to Mexico. Insanity. There's another case that happened last year. A 35-year-old Texas man with a U.S. passport was interrogated while crossing back into Texas from Mexico with his son at the McAllen Hidalgo Reynosa International Bridge, connecting Reynosa, Mexico to McAllen, Texas. His passport was taken from him, and Customs and Border Patrol agents told him to admit that he was born in Mexico, according to documents later filed in federal court. He refused because he was a citizen and was sent to the Los Fresnos Detention Center and entered into deportation proceedings. He was released 3 days later, but the government scheduled a deportation hearing for him in 2019. His passport was revoked. Now, his passport he had had since 2008. This is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, what's going to happen if, again, you're a citizen, you grew up here, you pay taxes here, you work here. What's going to happen if, under this, you get deported to a country that you don't actually belong in? So this guy gets deported, possibly getting deported to Mexico. Well, what's he going to do in Mexico? What if the Mexican government says, well, you're not a citizen of Mexico? Well, then this person becomes stateless. And that presents all sorts of enormous problems. This is insanity, but it's actually worse than that. This is where it gets into where it would be comical. One lawyer for citizens being hassled in this manner told the Post that many of his clients were being asked by government attorneys the question of, do you remember where you were born? Or when you were born? And they weren't joking. You're asking somebody to remember when they were born. Who remembers that? Seriously. This is about as farcical as bringing a toddler into court and asking them the question seriously. And this has been documented as well. Hey, 2-year-old, do you know why you crossed the border into the United States? The kid's not going to know what you're talking about. The kid's not going to know the answer to that question. Kid wants to sit there and probably eat some cookies and watch cartoons. This is insanity. This is beyond the onion. But to them, it makes perfect sense. Because when you look at the goal of people like Stephen Miller, it's to get the Latinos out of the country. It's to get them all out. To strip non-white citizens of citizenship. This is white supremacy in action. They are catering to the racist base that resents the so-called browning of America. And Stephen Miller, as I said, represents that base. This is the goal of the Trump administration. Stephen Miller. He is driving the administration's policies on immigration. And I love that his uncle called him out, by the way, in an article that he had wrote. He's like, I don't understand why Stephen Miller is this way. Especially when his family is a family of immigrants. And look, the scary question is here. They're already doing this, right? How far are they going to go? How far are they going to go? We know their goal. We know they want to get as many non-white Americans out. The question is, what are the lengths are they going to go in order to achieve that? And how long are we going to let it happen before the people get involved and vote them out? Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.